No money ain't a problem, girl. Just give me the time and the place and I will be there. Oh, 'cause I would go the distance for you, baby. I'd travel around the world if you would let me. I'll meet you where the sun, it always shines. You're on my mind all the time. We are not wasting this, 'cause you and I, we're good together. Oh, you always get me feeling better. And I know you stay by my side. You make me feel much better, 'cause girl, we're good together. And I tell you all too much, girl, but I want you to know what you got is a natural gift. I don't rap you all the time, girl. Don't wanna be rude, but a word, do you catch my drift? Yeah, 'cause I would go the distance for you, baby. I'd travel around the world if you would let me. I'll meet you where the sun, it always shines. You're on my mind all the time. We are not wasting this, 'cause you and I, we're good together. Oh, you always get me feeling better. And I know you stay by my side. You make me feel much better, 'cause girl, we're good together. Just to be amongst your presence, 'cause I'm losing my mind every second of time. Wait, 'cause you and I, we're good together. Oh, you always get me feeling better. And I know you stay by my side. You make me feel much better, 'cause girl, we're good together. 'Cause you and I, we're good together. Oh, you always get me feeling better. And I know you stay by my side. You make me feel much better, 'cause girl, we're good together. Oh,
Stay by my side. Stay by my side.
many moves fast, that's what you're thinking. Oh, you're not wrong there. Girl, what you drinking? I wanna take
칼질 많이 안 해봤네.
다 잘렸네요.
정과 여 썰고 그래.
그렇지.
썰고,
아이고.
그렇지. 성분 잘 써네. 저 여기
자, 여기.
썰고.
어디 있어요?
요 썰고. 요 썰고.
1 여기 있습니다.
this for the long haul. And now's your chance to make it right. Don't listen to anybody else but me tonight. Don't get what they say, I'ma have my way. 'Cause it ain't wrong loving you. At the end of the day, you'll push me away. No, it ain't wrong loving you. Don't get what you got, don't get what you're missing. You got what I need, you got them lips for kissing. And if I'm out of turn, and you think I'm dissing, by this evening, girl, we'll be reminiscing. Yeah, 'cause we just click, it's plain and simple. I wanna both be in this for the long haul. And now's your chance to make it right. Don't listen to anybody else but me tonight. Don't care what they say, I'll have my way. 'Cause it ain't wrong best I could. Didn't I give you everything? I tried my best just to be a man. I bought you diamond rings, everything that a woman could need. I bought you cars, clothes, a home. When things were rough for me, I kept on. And still I'm back again. Didn't I treat you right now? Didn't I do the best I could? Didn't I give you everything? I tried my best just to be a man. There's something wrong with you. Now tell me all your troubles, dear. Oh, you look bad, should be glad you're leading, man. Always be glad to sit at home. Now let me kiss your lovely lips. Oh, didn't I do it, baby? Didn't I do it right? Why'd you wanna leave it, baby? I said, didn't I treat you right? Treat you right? Didn't I treat you right now? Didn't I do the best I could? Didn't I give you everything? I tried my best just to be a man. Said I tried my best just to be a man. Girl, I tried my best just to be a man. Tried my best just to be a man. Tried my best just to be a man. Talk about highs and lows. What goes up comes down, you know. And I've been in a better place a year ago at your love's embrace. I never thought that I could deserve you.
머리도 좀 필요하다.
아니야 오늘
머리도 좀 필요하다. 두뇌 필요하다.
저 진영.
내가 머리로 날 뽑아? 머리로 진영을 뽑아?
아니야 내가 봤을 때 운으로 날 뽑았어.
오케이.
머리로 뽑은 게 아니라 운으로 뽑은 거야.
I want you to really want to, because it's all in the value. I need you to really need me too, because it's all in the value. I'm a great man, and I know that's greater. I just sell myself, but it doesn't matter. When you're a cool girl, they don't come cooler. Don't trade me in, not for something you want. I never thought that I'd have the nerve to tell you my world is crushed now without you. I want you to really want me to, 'cause it's all in the value. I need you to really need me to, because it's all in the value.
자, 와우.
This morning I woke up. I don't recall the time. I had the most amazing dream. Oh, but never mind. I'll tell you over breakfast in a minute. I wish you could have seen it. Let me rewind. But you really won't believe me, not even if I said. I wonder what it means. What's going on in my head? You think I should be worried? Man, it's getting blurry in my mind. I wish I could remember exactly what it was like. The things I do just to take me back when I shut my eyes. And it's out of my control this time. Boy, don't I know. Boy, don't I know.
상대가 안 되는데요?
아, 니네 볼이라고.
Of a haze. This ain't no California dreaming, more like a London days. Teeth in the right places, there are no spaces in my mouth. Can you give a man a break?
오케이, 교체.
I know I felt it at the time, but it's not real though. I am still
빅, let's get it.
내가 문제 너 들어와야 되지.
오케이, 자, 간다.
자, 몇 대 몇이에요?
in the eye. I wish I could remember exactly what it was like. The things I do just to take me back when I shut my eyes. And it's out of my control this time. It's out of my control this time. Boy, don't I know. Boy, don't I know. Boy, don't I know. Boy, don't I know. Oh, take me back. Oh, take me back. It's out of my control this time. 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 I wish I could remember exactly what it was like. The things I do just to take me back when I shut my eyes. And it's out of my control this time. Boy, don't I know. Boy, don't I know. Sorry for the wait. It's still a bit of a haze. right places. There are no spaces in my mouth. You give a man a break and give his dog a bone. I know I felt it at the time, but it's not real though. I am still here, looking you clear in the eye. I wish I could remember exactly what it was like. The things I do just to take me back when I shut my eyes. And it's out of my control this time. It's out of my control this time. Boy, don't I know